This channel is sponsored by the Army Painter.
It seems like just yesterday that we got the August points rebalancing, but here we are in September with a whole new balance update. Our expert team of Warhammologists, it's a real science, Dad, have been synthesizing the data and figuring out who are the winners, losers, and who avoided catching any strays in this balance update. I'm statistical outlier Campbell McLaughlin, and today we're looking at the Q3 balance update for Warhammer 40,000. To read more about this balance update and way more, head to Goonhammer.com. Link in the description. There are two changes to the core rules. First, devastating wounds are now applied in the order that the attacks happened, so you can't game the system to be more beneficial to you. Second, they fixed an accidental change that let a unit get into a transport when just one model was within 3 inches, when it should be every model. You probably didn't even notice that mistake. I certainly didn't. Still, I'm sure somebody will benefit from that loophole being closed. As a competitive sicko, the Tournament Companion is how I play all of my games of 40k, so this one really matters to me. Challenger cards are dunzo. Back to the sea with ye. I don't think anybody on our team actually liked these, and whenever they came up in my own games, they'd either be too little too late for the Challenger, or they'd just let one player rack up a few extra points before blitzing their opponent off the board. They seldom influenced the score in any way that really mattered, and they just added another mechanic that nobody really felt great about. On the rare occasion they actually did affect the outcome, losing a game because your opponent got a bunch of free points never made anyone feel very good. With the broad strokes out of the way, we're going to go faction by faction and determine who came out ahead in this data slate. Because I have 3 very hungry cats to get back to, I'm not going to go into each faction in exhaustive detail, but you can read our more in-depth takes on Goonhammer.com. For now, here's the short version. We'll start by going over all the factions that came out ahead, even if only by a little. While they probably won't hit the heights of the unnerfed Mordaka detachment, Orcs are in a good spot. Alongside points drops for staple units like Mega Knobs, Ghazghkull Thraka only takes up the space of 4 models in a battle wagon now instead of 15, and they removed all of the riders about different equipment affecting transport space. That means you can actually stick Thraka with a decent sized unit while still having an effective vehicle on the table. Thraka himself can also lead boys and knobs units now too, so there's way more use cases for the big guy. Death Dreads now cause mortal wounds on the charge instead of their dinky battle shock ability, and the Hunta and Kill Rigs both switched from vehicles to monsters. That opens and closes a few doors for them keyword-wise, losing tank shock but gaining heroic intervention. Lastly, Commandos can now split into units of 5, which is way more useful for infiltrating, move blocking, screening, and objective play. Not much happens to the Eldari, save for a tamping down of Swooping Hawk spam lists. Those went up in price fairly significantly, but other Phoenix Lords and their Aspect Warriors are untouched. You're probably still going to see Lycus, Fuegan, and Jane Czar in most lists, and the army as a whole will continue to do well. At first blush, the Adeptus Mechanicus might look like they're in a tough spot. Call going up 40 points is an awful lot. However, Call got some major changes to his Canticles of the Omnissiah ability that more than make up for it. It now goes off anytime in your command phase, and all 3 of its abilities are genuinely useful. Most eye-popping is Invocation of Machine Vengeance, letting you pick a target and giving army-wide rerolls to hit against it. Mantra of Discipline now gives an extra point of OC to add mech units within 6 inches, and Shroud Psalm now gives units within 6 inches stealth. You can already get cover easily enough, and stealth is a nice buff to stack on top of that. Honors your Doomcrawlers, Iron Striders, and both flavors of Sicarians all saw a boost to their damage output too, and suddenly AdMech are starting to look pretty scary for a bunch of cyborgs in bathrobes. Deathwatch saw solid points cuts across the board, with their various kill teams going down 10 to 20 points each. It's still a finesse army, but it should be a smidge more forgiving when you can afford to take more stuff. The World Eaters got some internal rebalancing and points adjustments that should make them the kind of melee powerhouse you want them to be. Exalted 8-bounds now get +1 damage against vehicles and monsters instead of their old edge case to end all edge cases rule that forced desperate escape tests on vehicles. The Slaughterbound went up to strength 10, which is a decent breakpoint for a lot of units, and Hellbrutes got confirmation that their Frenzy rule lets them fight multiple times per phase. While Forge Fiends went up in points, they're still worth taking, don't worry about it, Angron and Land Raiders went down, and the whole picture is one that's just a bit choppier than before. Dorn's angriest boys and the Black Templars dodge any changes whatsoever, so expect to see loads of cheap repulsor executioners with full rerolls on the table, carrying multiple squads of sword brethren with marshals. It's me, I'm the problem. The Dark Angels saw their centerpiece unit get better, with the Lion getting to use 2 of his abilities in the command phase instead of just 1. He's going to keep being an auto-take in most lists, buffing the damage output and durability of units around him while being a credible threat on his own. The Landspeeder Vengeance is back with, well, a vengeance, as its guns went up to damage 2 or damage 3 if it's overcharging, making it just a bit more useful. I'll be honest, I thought that thing was in Legends by now, but I'm glad it might see the table again. The Tau Empire got a lighter touch, but they're still coming out ahead. Points drops across Crisis Suits, Broadsides, and Farsight are all tacit buffs to Retaliation Cadre or any suit-heavy build, and Riptide saw the strength of their ion accelerators go up by 2, making them better at dealing with armor. Tyranids saw points drops to Gene Stealers, Molochs, Neurolictors, and Turvagons, and nothing else. That's good for any Tyranid player, and it makes Subterranean Assault just that little bit nastier, with the Moloch getting cheaper. Sisters of Battle saw some healthy points drops to a few characters as well as Retributors, who also got a reworked rule. They now reroll hit and wound rolls of 1 with shooting attacks, and they get +1 to those rolls if they target something that killed one of your sister's units. It used to be an either-or situation, so that's a healthy buff. Custodes saw points drops, but mostly on units like Vigilators who don't see a ton of play. Custodian Guard seeing drops is interesting though, since they're the mainstays in a lot of lists. Oh hey, I didn't see you there. Who could have forgotten the Emperor's Children? Certainly not me. They're doing fine. Flawless Blades now have 4 attacks each, and Fulgrim can move over terrain that's 4 inches or less in height, so, you know, that's cool. He also got a little cheaper, so you can fit him in your lists more easily. And literally nothing changed for the Death Guard whatsoever. So hey, maybe Games Workshop forgot about them too. Now they can't all be winners, and boy howdy do we got some losers here. Not you though, you're a perfect little angel baby. Thousand Sons got dust busted, with a slew of points hikes on pretty much everything worth taking, save for a discount on Terminators and Sekitar robots. What actually hurts are the changes to their army rule, and they can only attempt rituals once per turn. You'll need to lean more on channeling the warp to make those spells go off. Meanwhile, Terminator Sorcerers now only buff their own unit against 1 enemy target instead of their whole army. The Imperial Knight's fully tilted Valor Strike Lance detachment got toned down right out of the gate, meaning I had to republish that stupid detachment focus video. Now their nastier stratagems only affect 1 knight at a time instead of 3, and they don't reroll advances anymore. At least Big Knights had their OC crank up to 10 to match their Chaos cousins. Speaking of that particular devil, Chaos Knights also took some hits. The defensive buff in the Infernal Lance now makes you choose between the 5-up invulnerable save and the 6-up Feel No Pain. Lords of Dread's claim for the Dark God stratagem is now just in your command phase, and the Abominant's Mortal Wound ability no longer can affect the same unit multiple times. It's a pretty big miss in our opinion, and it absolutely doesn't address the real issue in the army, which is how skewed dual Gatling despoilers are. Everyone's favorite werewolf Viking cosplayers in the Space Wolves saw points increases across most of their signature units, but nothing too egregious. If anything, it just seems like they're still paying for the sins of Wolf Jail early in this edition. Imperial agents are a faction in the same way that Cheese Whiz is a food. Legally they fit the definition, but we all know they're just meant to go on something else. They saw a few points drops, but generic Inquisitors and Draxus can't join Deathwatch kill teams anymore. Guess we'll see if the new kill team from a kill team makes any waves. The changes for Necrons are basically all around the Silent King, whose aura that let friendly units ignore modifiers now just gives them +2 inches of movement instead. That's not bad, but fast Necron units were already fast, and having your whole Necron death ball ignore modifiers was definitely more useful. Lastly are the armies who aren't winners, aren't losers, but are instead a mysterious third thing. Space Marines mostly saw points shifting around, likely for internal balance purposes. While staples like the Ballistas, Blade Guard, and Gilliman all went up, the good Land Raiders, Redemptors, and Aggressors went down. Unless you were leaning hard on Ballistii, the shooty dreadnoughts, you know what I mean, you're probably doing just fine. The Blood Angel Sanguinary Guard went up a few points, but they gained an attack and are now hitting on 2s. It's a good buff that brings them in line with other chapter-specific elite melee infantry, but you're definitely paying for it. The good old Imperial Guard saw a load of points drops, with Combat Engineers, Leontis, Gaunt's Ghosts, and all super heavy tanks dropping significantly. Conversely, Dorns of the vanilla and commander flavor both went up. As those are mainstays in a lot of lists, that might seem like a bad thing, but with how many points drops there are elsewhere, it'll probably be a wash in most lists. They also clarified that you couldn't stack the same order multiple times in the same unit in case you were doing that. Genestealer cults saw a boatload of tweaks, and they are spread across a bunch of units and detachments, and to be frank, it kinda makes my head spin. The short version is that melee cult builds are back on the menu, with drops to pure strains, metamorphs, and abominants, and an updated stratagem in the Xenocreed congregation, allowing a 6-inch deep strike that you can charge out of. I'm just going to tell you to read the article on this one. We absolutely do not have the time to go through this army here. The Leagues of Votann Codex is so new that there wasn't much to change yet. You can no longer put artillery into their transports, so you can't hitch your artillery to a Sagittar like some kind of Napoleonics game anymore. The secure position stratagem happens at the end of any of your phases rather than any phases, so your little dudes can't jump out of a transport in your opponent's turn anymore. You also can't charge after getting out. That's definitely a nerf, but it's just one stratagem in one detachment, so we don't think it makes Votann losers this go around. Grey Knights saw the same Land Raider points drops that every other power armor wearing Jamoke did this data slate, but that's it. Those don't show up too often in most Grey Knights lists, and an extra few points to play with isn't going to change how the army acts on the table. Lastly, we're just going to skip over Drukhari since her codex should be right around the corner. And that's it for the data slate. Au revoir, Challenger cards. Please take your 3 victory points with you on the way out. They were pretty ginger with most of the new codex releases, for better or worse. We'll see how this plays out over the next few months, as even with Nova in the rear view, there's still a few major events left to go this year. If you want to dive even deeper, head to Goonhammer.com for even more analysis. To keep up on all the latest goings-on in this ever-changing game, subscribe to us here on YouTube. If you want to help us balance our own books, why not support us on Patreon for Discord access, bonus podcasts, and an even better experience in tabletop battles, with faction-specific resource tracking for things like yield points, pain tokens, or Space Marine doctrines. I've been Codex Creep McPointsDrop, and Genestealer Cults is still an unsolvable enigma to me. Every time I look at their rules, it's like looking at a magic eye picture, but the schooner I can't see wants to kill me. Thanks for watching.